Hey, and welcome to Leadershipisation, all things leadership. My name is Beth Bergen, and I'm a global leadership and communication coach. My jam is to work with executives, with managers, and with business owners, and it's all about helping them to build their influence because they've developed additional leadership and communication skills. And what this means is that they can do the things that many of us want to be able to do. It's about leading cohesive teams. It's about driving those results. And it's also, importantly, about becoming more visible in your own organization, and importantly, more visible in your industry, so that opportunities that might present themselves for you are there. And I'm here every single Tuesday at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Currently, Sydney and Melbourne, or New South Wales and Victoria, are being impacted by that. So, when answers are really obvious, when the answer to or a solution is really obvious, anyone can manage the situation. However, as one of your leadership intelligence tools, what you need to be understanding and building is the fact that leadership is what you do when there isn't an obvious right answer. Leadership is what you do when there isn't an obvious right answer. We can all juggle the stories. We can all deal with imperfect information. It's about making that decision into the grey, somewhere between black and white. A decision that's going to please some people and disappoint others. A decision that isn't about perfection. It's about actually having the courage and the integrity and the principles and the emotional steadiness to be able to make those decisions. And that's when your leadership will absolutely shine through. So today, what we're going to look at very quickly is how to make confident, values-based decisions, and how to make them often when it's confusing, there's high pressure, there's high stakes. We all experience this at some stage of our leadership journey. So you can't actually learn this out of a book. This is one of those things that you're going to learn as you go along. So you're going to learn as you experience it. So I'll make sure today that I give you some tips to be able to start putting some of these into practice as well. So we've got about 7 key points today. The first one is understanding what a grey moment is. And as I said before, this is between the black and white. This is when it's not perfection. This is when there is no perfect option. It's about you actually plugging into and picking the best available one. Now, that's likely to make you feel a little bit uncertain. It'll make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. Why? Because you don't have full certainty. And so when we're thinking about this, we've got to look at what are the considerations? What are the things that we need to bring to the table in our thinking before we make this decision? We need to think about what are the human considerations. We need to balance them with the operational considerations, the reputational considerations, and the ethical considerations. And what's really important here is that you don't let the process of making this decision paralyze you. What a lot of people don't realize is that making no decision is actually a decision. When you make no decision, you're deciding to make no decision. And so that doesn't help anybody. So the important thing from a leadership intelligence perspective is to make sure that you are not letting this grey paralyze you. The second point I want to talk to is that it's about learning to work with the information that you have access to. Now, you know, the reality is that as a leader, you're never going to get a complete picture. You don't have time to understand every single nuance. So it's about recognizing that if what you're doing is waiting for more and more and more information to get a better picture, the longer you wait, the more likely you are to become paralyzed. And when we become paralyzed, when we're waiting and we're foofing around, you're losing your team. If you're waiting for the perfect outcome, then you're losing your team along the way. So what's really important is that you learn to work with the incomplete information. However, it's about actually discerning what is the most meaningful information. And as you already know, that's all about getting curious. So learning to work with the information that you have access to, come up with your own list of what are the key questions around this? What are the things I actually need to be asking? So the third point is this. There's always going to be competing priorities. There will always, always be competing priorities. And so let's have a look at some of those things that you might need to weigh up. Short-term ease. Ooh, this is the easy response versus a longer-term integrity. That will be a challenge. Thinking about weighing up the team well-being versus expectations about the performance that others are placing on your team. Are you going to make a decision that impacts negatively on the team well-being so that you can lift the performance or meet what might be an unrealistic expectation? That would be a great example there. Another one would be individual needs. Like, what are your needs as an individual? What are the individual needs of your team versus organizational goals? The organization is really clear that this is what it would want to do. And also, there's likely to be a competing priority between being emotionally comfortable versus an ethical decision. Like leadership, it's about a conscious choice. And that conscious choice is not always convenient and it's not always comfortable. And that's what being a leader is. Not always comfortable, not always convenient, not always easy. The next point I want to make is that it's helpful if you know your own values and that you're able to combine these with organizational values. Logic is awesome when things are black and white. Logic can be really awesome. Maybe you can plug into your values as a bit of a compass. So think about what are your values and understand what are the organizational values, and then be asking yourself some values-based questions. Things like this. What choice aligns with who we are and what we stand for? What choice here aligns with who we are or what we stand for? Now, there are some organizations that won't take funding or donations from tobacco companies. There are some that might not take them from gambling companies. Now, I've chosen those two simply because they can be a little bit contentious. So understand What choice aligns with who we are and what we stand with, what we stand for rather, so that you can use that to inform your decision. Another great values-based question is this: would this pass the pub test? You know, if we told the public about it, what would they think? Would it, if it was on the front page of the newspaper or the lead item in the nightly news, what would the public think? And another step on from that, and would you still stand behind it? If other people said to you, oh, yeah, oh, this isn't making much sense. Like at the moment in Australia, we've, you know, a politician is being like castigated, I guess, in the media. Whether it's right or whether it's wrong isn't what I'm commenting about here, but it would appear on the surface that this person has overused taxpayers' funding for things that to the public appear to be of a much more personal nature. So, you know, will it stand the pub test? Will it be that stand being the lead item in the newspaper or on the nightly news? So check that out. The third question here is, will this option still feel right in 12 months' time? Now, that's a harder one. That's why I put it third, because maybe it won't be right because things can change in that period of time. So it's really the first two that I'd like you to consider using, because those values will guide you through. They're not going to eliminate the ambiguity. They're not going to take the grey away, but they will guide you through. Okay, our fifth point to be looking at. It's important that you manage your own emotions during uncertainty. Now, we've talked about this quite a lot. And this is the reason why. When you can regulate your own emotions, it keeps everybody else feeling calm, because the more heightened your emotions are, the greater the tension between you and other people. The greater the tension between you and your team. Now, what's important for you to understand is that your team is looking to you. This is how they calibrate themselves. They notice what's going on with you and they calibrate based on your behaviors. And your calm leadership, your tone of voice, your presence is what actually builds trust in your leadership. And in situations that are grey, where you've got that trust, that can actually really help to shape the outcome. Why do I say that? Because you may be asking your team to do something a little different, a bit more challenging than what they've done before. And if they trust you, if you built that rapport with them, then it's going to be easier for you to get them to do that. What we know is that emotional reactivity absolutely clouds your judgment. You know, it lifts the tension, so you're going to be able to work your way through the grey a whole lot better, the uncertainty of that grey a whole lot better, if you can regulate your own emotions. Number 6, always communicate your grey area decisions with clarity and with integrity. Now, remember, we've already determined these decisions, some people won't like them. Some people won't understand them. And so your job as a leader is to help them to understand it, because actually people don't need the decision to be perfect. They do, however, need to understand it. So that's the important thing here. So there are 3 areas I want you to look at. The first one is context. So here's what we know. This is the context of why this decision has been made. Here's what we know, and here's what we don't know. The second thing is to examine the values. What are the values that guided your choice? So that's context and values. And the third thing is to determine and to discuss with your team the impact. So here's what this means next. This is what we're going to be required to do next. So context, values, and impact will help people to understand the decision. And again, I want to remind you that transparency builds trust. Even when people disagree, transparency builds trust. So let's have a look now at some tools that you can use right now that are going to support you to make your grey decisions. I'm all about you staying confident, about you staying consistent, and about you staying calm and being able to communicate with that clarity that is so essential for your team. So I've got 3 here. There's a lot of 3s today. Have you noticed that? It's a bit crazy. So the first one is this. It's a 3-lens decision scan. More 3s. So the 3-lens decision scan. We want to think about and sort of put every decision through these 3 lenses. What is the impact on individuals? What is the impact on the team? And what will the impact be on the organization? Now, I would include my clients in there somewhere. Yeah? What is the impact? Individuals, team, and organization, including client. Now, what I've found is that when we can train ourselves to look at things through these 3 lenses, it helps us, it prevents us from seeing blind spots. If you can look at all 3, then it prevents those blind spots from happening. So make sure that you use that 3, or if you need 4, that 4-lens decision. They're the 3 I'm suggesting. You can choose any 3 or 4 that you would like to. The second thing is think about kind of mapping it out and think about what I call the trade-off map. And this is where you've got your benefits and you've got your risks. And into every single one of this, you look at who is affected by that option. So here's a benefit, who's affected by that? Here's a risk, who's affected by that? And what will happen is that you'll get clarity quite quickly. Now, coming out with less or more on one side doesn't mean that that's necessarily the final decision that you're going to make. What it means is that you've used this as a tool to get clarity. Yeah, that's really important. The third one is what I call the 48-hour clarity rule. So this is gather all the information you need, reflect on that information for a bit, consult with other people if you need to, and then make a decision within 48 hours. This is important because momentum outweighs perfection. The sooner you can make that decision and implement it, whatever the decision is, the better it's going to be for you and your team. Now, as you know, we always have some reflection questions, and I've got 3 again today. It's a day of, as I said, lots and lots of 3. So the first question I want you to ask yourself is this one. How do you typically respond when the answer is not completely clear? Now, there's no right or wrong here. With these reflections, they're designed to help you to identify, oh, Here's a learning moment for me, or, oh, that's a bit of a breakthrough, because it's all about self-awareness. The more self-aware you are, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to develop your self-awareness and your leadership intelligence. So that's the first one. The second question is this: what helps you to stay steady when others are anxious and reactive? Now, this is about you being self-aware. So why is it that I'm calm and I'm good to go and everybody else is in a real tiz? Give yourself a pat on the back and think, okay, do I need to roll this particular behavior out more often? The third question for reflection is this one: how can you improve the way you communicate your grey area decisions? Could you be more decisive? Could you use context, values, impact? Are you over justifying and adding to the confusion? There's a lot that you can learn. I've specifically chosen these reflection questions to make you think. That's what reflection is all about. And I know that you will identify some strengths and some potential weaknesses by having a good look at these questions and reflecting on them. So, in summary, anyone can lead when the choice is really obvious, because that's about managing. And those values absolutely bring clarity when certainty is impossible. The steadier you are, the calmer you are, the higher the trust. And welcome those grey area decisions, because they give you a chance to actually experience some new leadership skills. So regulate your own emotions, welcome those grey moments, and those values will be a great anchor for that complexity. So use these techniques, learn to back yourself, and remind yourself that whatever decision you make, you can always change that decision. Whatever decision you make, you can always change that decision. So let's hope you don't have too many grey area decisions to be making. So thank you so much for watching today. If you've got any questions or comments, put them on the platform that you've been watching this on, and we'll get back to you. We're also open to suggestions about topics for leadershipisation, if there's something you would particularly like to know about. If you're watching this as a replay, hashtag replay. Finally, how you build your leadership intelligence, the way to build your leadership intelligence begins with communication. And what that does is it feeds into your influence, it feeds into your visibility, it feeds into your authority, it feeds into your accountability. I've got a number of ways that I know are really impactful when it comes to enhancing and building your communication skills. Check out below this, there'll be a link for a 30-minute call with me. Just go on the calendar and book it. No hassle. I'm not going to do a hard sell on you. It's entirely up to you, the kind of questions and the things that we talk about. But I would love to be able to share with you what some of those options are. In the meantime, see you next week. Bye now.